Hello there, my name is Hashim Mohammed, and in this video, we'll be talking about how to develop digital products and services that people actually want. I am a user experience designer, meaning I develop and design digital products, namely apps and websites, and even games for clients across the world. I have worked with clients from US, UK, Europe, and Asia. So what I will talk about in this video are mostly relatable to the people in the tech industry. But if you are developing physical products, you should be able to relate to things because none of the things that we'll be talking about this in this video are exclusive to the tech industry, but the examples that I will put forth in this video will be mostly relatable to the tech industry because of the fact that I am from the industry. Anyway, so there are three parts in this discussion. We have the problems, because there's a worldview that the world is only filled with problems, right? And that's definitely a valid worldview because that's a way of looking at things. And I would say that and I'll talk about what I mean by valid in a minute. So there's problems, there's opportunities. So problems is basically, as you know, is all of us entrepreneurs. We are basically hired to go solve people's problems, right? So problems big and small. So, and we also have opportunities, which is basically, okay, so how are we going to solve problems? Or maybe we're not going to solve problems through it, but okay, we see a natural resource and we think, okay, maybe we can use this to solve our hunger problem. We saw a tree of fruits. We eat from that fruit, or we find a place where we can mine gold, or find any natural resources that we can sell and make money from. So those are opportunities basically that are readily, naturally available. There are people who are willing to work for you. Now those are opportunities, basically people coming and presenting themselves to you. So there are lots of times when opportunities just come and present, right? And then we also have the space in between. So space in between is where you extract or problems start to come from. Okay, now you can call this the metaphysical entity, or sometimes you can call the physical. The space in between I've put forth as both. So for example, things that you don't interact with, or all of us humans don't interact with. A good example would be the black hole, or maybe the Astrometis galaxy, the galaxy. I mean the Milky Way after our. I mean the galaxy outside of the Milky Way. So those are basically places, things, whatever you want to call it, that none of us have actually seen or touched or been in, right? So those are spaces in between. So you can go there and sort of create problems there, because if you go ahead and if you send a couple of people outside the galaxy, and if there are going to be a couple of people who are living outside this Milky Way, they're going to have problems. So you're going to go and solve those problems. So those are basically spaces in between. So we're going to talk about the problem side here because, as I mentioned, there are lots of people who think that the whole world is basically filled with problems, and this world is just fundamentally suffering. And I actually agree to that statement a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Because the basic human need that all of us entrepreneurs, politicians, whatever you are, if you want to live in this world with this society, what you need to do is you need to facilitate survival for the people or the animals, whatever that is. So your job is to create survival and have survival. So what I mean by that is, if you even look at animals, especially deers, what they want to do is they want to be safe from predators. If you're creating food products, right? Like if you're creating snacks, or if you're having a restaurant, and yes, obviously based on your socioeconomic conditions, you can have a very luxurious, top of the line 5-star restaurant in some posh area of your city, but that's also a survival, right? You're trying to protect people from not being the the odd one out. Everybody wants to be accepted in the society. They want to be not, sort of known, or like sort of be put to the predators, right? They want to be safe and secure. Now, safe and secure might be the kind of word that some of you entrepreneurs might despise. I mean, not you entrepreneurs. I mean, I am an entrepreneur, or at least I like to think of myself. So, some of us might despise the word safe and security, but actually, what we're doing is that because our job is to create products and services, basically, we can't live without solving problems, right? And that's because that's our safety, that's our security. If we don't do that, for lots of us, that's not going to be secure for us, right? That's not secure for us, like mentally, sometimes spiritually. So yeah, so basically we need to understand that survival can come as an experience, or they can also come in the form of defense. Now, as we talked about, like all of us want to be, all of us want to be saved from either perceived harm or physical harm. Okay, so so basically physical harm or perceived harm. Now we talk about defense. So defense is mostly, if you talk about protecting your physical self or your mental self or anything from any kind of like direct harm. Okay, a good example would be deer tries to protect itself from the tigers and all the animals, like the wild animals out there in the forest. We are also trying to protect ourselves with the shelter here. We're trying to protect ourselves from what? So from harsh weather, from intruders, from getting ourselves sick and trying not to, drench ourselves in the floods or whatever that is, and so many things that this four walls are trying to protect us. So if you think about it, everything that we're trying to do is to try to provide tools for survival. So that's at the top of the thing, is that everybody wants. Most of the people don't want to be away, or like try to be the unique one out, because the unique one out is actually, if you probe it down, is that they want to be accepted by a certain class, or be associated with a certain identity, and that identity is the safety and security net. And so let's go ahead and explore that in detail. So we talk about defense. You have the enemy, which is perceived or witnessed. Okay, so defense, as I said to you, for some of us, a person is someone who is harmful, whom we think is harmful. Like, for example, all of us countries have defense ministers and defense laws against countries that we think are going to bomb us or whatever. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just trying to put forth the statement here. I'm just going to try to put an example here. All of us countries. All countries have a perceived enemy, or at least in our day-to-day language, or at least most people, all of us have an enemy, right? Whether it be perceived or as people we actually witnessed. We have experiences. We have a history of some country basically invading us, or some culture invading us, whatever that is. So there's always an enemy, and that's. You want to provide tools for defense. Now, that's what a lot of politicians, especially the right-wing politicians, try to offer us. It's like defense, security. You need to be secure, because if that's not going to be the case, businesses won't come in. You won't survive. If you don't survive, your children won't. They won't have a really good life, and so on and so forth. So the cycle again builds on top of that. But it all comes down to the defense side of things. And defense, if you think about it, even humans. When think about it from a very prehistoric days. I mean, not prehistoric days, but if you go back to the hunter-gathering days, where we basically our ancestors, I guess, ate raw animals and stuff. What were they trying to do? They were trying to defend themselves from hunger, or they were trying to defend themselves from wild animals, like putting fire in the forest. What are they trying to do? They're trying to protect themselves in the forest. Now, when you're designing experiences, so that's where product development and services development came into picture. Okay, we thought, Maybe we don't have to just protect people all the time. We can also create service experiences that people can enjoy, or people can buy to have a better life. All right, so you can design experiences based on different context. Okay, so there are different levels here. So the first thing is you need to understand that there are. Okay, so when you think about back in the olden days, we never had restaurants. So why do we? I mean, we could make food and we could go and buy. I mean, we could just go kill animals and just get the food from there. But why do you have to go to the market? Well, because we have other things to do, and I mean, and not everybody can become a hunter these days, right? So the chain, I mean, sort of has evolved, and we lost track. Especially people in the city don't really know where the fruits come from. They come from where? Supermarkets? No, that's where they're sold, but that's not where it comes from. It comes from the farm. Now, is the farm is like all responsible for all the fruits that come? Not exactly. There are, there are artificial plants. There are real, naturally grown plants, and so on and so forth. So it's incredibly complex. So, the first thing you need to know is there's something called socioeconomic conditions. Now, there's social conditions, or so for example the mental state of the people. So when you're designing experiences, when you talk about creating in for example the Airbnb app, which basically allows you to sleep in other people's homes, basically in strangers' homes, for lesser money compared to that of hotels. Now that now Airbnb is also an experience, because what they're trying to do is to not just offer you a place to stay for lesser money, but they're offering an experience where you can live with other cultures, other homes. Like for example, when I was in Denmark, I happened to stay with a Danish American family, which I could have never even thought of if I was here 2 years ago. I never thought I would go to that place in the first place, but when I did, it was a different experience, right? You could get to people, you get to meet with people from different cultures and understand what their metaphorical language is, how they do things, and also to clear some stereotypes that we have. Anyway, so the mental state of the people is, for example, you're creating a product or service like Airbnb in a place where people are not really comfortable with staying with other strangers because of, let's say, the perceived harm. Like people think that they're not safe with other strangers. If you're going to create a product or service like that in a place, well, that's not going to be a thing. Now, it also is a thing. Is like, for example, when Airbnb started, it started in the U.S., right? But even in the U.S., it wasn't really something that was celebrated. Staying with strangers, not a big thing, but you still need to go and dive deeper and find out really emotionally, are people really comfortable staying with strangers? Turns out people were actually happy with it, because it wasn't just about staying with strangers. It's about talking and knowing other people. Now, Americans, by the way, I'm not an American, by the way, but a lot of North Americans are incredibly social compared to that of, let's say, Scandinavians. I don't mean that in a negative way, but culturally they are more open and more social compared to those people, and therefore the chances of being successful are a lot more. If you're going to create a product or service like Airbnb during the time of World War II, where people are all suffering from emotional torture, that's not going to be a good time, good place at all. That's a mental state of the people, emotional state, how they are in terms of thinking about things. So education also matters. Now, if you're going to sell an educational course about Photoshop or about Adobe After Effects or Adobe Illustrator to a bunch of people who don't have access to food and shelter, and you're going to teach people how to, talk about extremely complex subjects to people who don't even understand the fundamentals, you are underestimating and you're sort of teaching providing the wrong service to the wrong people. So you need to understand the educational and the literacy level of the people. And some languages also, for example, languages, especially linguistics, are not basically simple vocabulary. It's not something like Google Translate. Now, Google Translate is a big weird system we have, that basically lets us know what every word, it translates every single word, but sometimes it misses out the point that there are, for example, when we say the word lagom in Swedish, that basically means just the right amount. But I mean, the emotions are not captured within the word, right? So if you really want to, experience the word lagom, which is just the right amount, which basically is about essentials, not too much, not too little. So, but that's like the English translation of the word, but that's not what that's not all what it means, right? If you really want to understand that, you really have to go to the place to understand it. So linguistics is sometimes okay. It sort of makes us feel that the world is so small, but actually the world is incredibly complex. Now, as I mentioned in my last video, the problems are incredibly complex. You need to understand the complexity of any problem, but the solution needs to be simple. And for that, you need to understand the complexity of the problem. Identity of the status quo. So the thing is, you need to understand, okay, so for this society, for this culture, what is the ultimate thing on the top of the pyramid? Now, if you talk about Western civilization, the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He identified the different levels of needs. He drew a pyramid. We talked about the first layer, like basic food and shelter, emotional belonging, love, and all that. On the very top, we have something called self-actualization, which is to say that people are able to achieve what they really want, their ambitions and stuff. So they're away from societies, societies. What's the thing from octopus? It starts from T. I'm not okay. The tentacles. Yeah, I'm sorry. The tentacles of the society. So trying to achieve what they really want, the value that they really want to offer in the world. Are you able to achieve the thing that you really want without thinking about the baggages like your safety, your security, or low level stuff, right? So that's the identity of the status quo, is what is the ultimate success according to people. What is the status quo here? So understand about your culture and stuff. Now cultural identity as well. So again, we talked about social hierarchy here. So social hierarchy can be influenced by politics, sometimes your industrial professions and philosophy. Now, for example, in Asia, especially in the South Asia, which is predominantly in the Indian, because as you can say, I'm an Indian myself. So especially in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and all these regions here, engineering, doctor, lawyers, maybe economists are basically considered to be the noble professions. Okay, anything, if you are a painter, if an artist or something, you might not be given equal respect. So things like those are industrial or professions. So sometimes those things are considered to be you might be put on top. If you are just an ordinary doctor, you might be given a preference about somebody who's a very good artist as well. Now politics as well, sometimes the social hierarchy is influenced by politics. In places where democracy is not a thing, politics can play a major role in defining the social hierarchy. So, and also organization or individual or collective. So when we talk about accountability in politics, especially accountability here, how are people organizing themselves? Do they think of themselves as individually accountable for their actions, or do they think that they are a part of some collective and that their collective is more responsible for their actions? Now, or do they act according to the rules or the teachings or the lessons from the collective, or do they think that the individual is capable of creating their own or carving their own pathways? Now, sometimes the collective defines the things that that what they should do. So why is this important? Well, for example, your product or service is trying to, or your politician or whatever, you're trying to carve out a path. You're creating a product or service to basically that is that informs or basically has a family plan. You're trying to adopt a bunch of people. From the client is not an individual. Let's say if it's a bunch of people, then you need to understand the structure of the society, right? If it's individual or collective, that will make a difference in your decision as well. So politics sometimes is also incredibly important. Sometimes political symbols and signs are something that people will consider. For example, try not to put any controversial symbols, because yes, one of the biggest things that is that the biggest enemy to a business is, especially in this globalized world, is wars. The last thing we want is wars. It's not good for anybody, especially for businesses, because a place where any kind of wars are predominant, businesses can't run as smoothly, okay, or at least in the way that they want to. So a better way to understand individual is if you understand the word self-actualization in Abraham Maslow's law. Basically, he talks about how individual is able to collectively, able to individually think and organize himself. Now, philosophy is also what is the philosophy of life there. So how do they, so what do they believe in, or how do they think? Like, so for example, your marketing material can talk in the language that they understand. So that's where they come. That brings us to this point here: metaphorical and basic language. So when Netflix came here, they really adopted the Indian way of talking. They adopted the Indian shows. They didn't just put up a Hindi translation to every single Netflix movie. That's not all there is to making a product or service available for a specific country. That's not enough. You need to go above and beyond and to make the product or service relatable to that people. So that's language here, and that's metaphorical language. That is you understanding certain cultural references. Now I'm not exactly sure if I could use some references here. For example, there I mean in Hindi there are, for example, in Hindi or in Tamil, for example, which is where I'm from Chennai. So there are lots of things that don't really mean anything literally, but we use those words to refer, to make jokes and all that stuff, right? So it's important we understand those things so that we don't hurt those sentiments, or maybe we can leverage on those sentiments to create materials, to create copy content and stuff that are that create services and products that are more you touch at a more deeper level of people. So now let's come to the types of experiences. So we have educational experiences. Obviously, me trying to tell you what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to educate here. But yes, my job, I also try to educate myself through other people and through other mediums. I attended university, schools. I watched YouTube videos, lectures, and I went through a couple of courses and so on and so forth. So I did have the experiences are also for metaphysical. So those are basically belief in transcendent beings, or if you basically pray to or basically ask of any transcendent being, then that's mostly spiritual or metaphysical thing. Now, spiritual experiences can also be things like meditation. So you try to exit out of this world and try to focus on maybe yourself, your energy, or something that's just not physical, so outside of physical being. And so again, spiritual can be or cannot, need not be influenced by religion. You also have travel experiences. I don't think I have to elaborate on that. Food experiences, definitely. Entertainment, sexual partnership or kinship, security, emotional, and health experiences. So all of these experiences are the things that people add to your life. Now, things that affect you at different levels. So, for example, health experience might not be something like, it might not be a physical product or service. It can be something like a hospital, which tries to, which they try to not just try to fix your problem, but while they're doing that, they offer you a room, a doctor who speaks in a certain way. They try to hospitalize that experience, so that they try to create an experience where you becoming a sick person. I mean, you're becoming better is not just an experience of recovering, but it's also a delightful experience. Now, that's also a health experience, so you can offer emotional experiences, mostly from psychiatrists, those kinds of people, psychiatrists, psychologists. I'm not a psychiatrist, by the way. Security is definitely, we talk about it in politicians, mostly right wing politicians, but because the conservative wing mostly talks about things like national security or trying to protect ourselves from whether it be physical harm or metaphysical harm or basically perceived harm, right? So partnership and kinship, if I have to describe it, is mostly, I don't think I have elaborated on that, is basically girlfriends, your wife, your husbands, people alike. And this one here, sexual experiences, are basically the experiences that touch you on the most amount of senses. Now, if there's a TED talk about this, I think it's about the six senses. If you go ahead and, I'm not sure about the title of the video. I will put the link. I will link that video to this to the description of this video. That's a reference. Now, there's a TED talk where he talks about how different experiences sort of touch you at different levels. So, for example, if you're cycling, you're basically touching, what do you call it? There's a touch experience. You don't really have a smell experience over there. You're not really smelling anything. When you're biking, you're maybe hearing, like you're riding stuff. You're you're basically seeing stuff. You're basically hearing stuff. You may not smell a lot when you're going on the cycling. Maybe yes, the if you're biking on, let's say, on the top of the mountains, you will do that. But how does all these, the senses really coherently and sort of, they manifest, in sort of in the most cohesive manner? That's really a good experience. When we talk about, when we had this discussion, and when I researched on what exactly is the perfect user experience, right? The question is, okay, the answer to that question is an experience where you don't really notice anything, right? So, for example, you're watching this video and you didn't notice any hiccups, right? You didn't notice any lags, blurs, or anything like that, right? That's a good experience, maybe, because you never had any obstacles in your way, right? There are minimal obstacles. The job it intends to do is what it does, right? Now, it's also a question of creating meaningful experiences, right? So experiences that are on the most deepest level. So the deeper you are into survival, the more easier it is to validate your products and services. Okay. Airbnb can look like a basic hospital service, but they do more than that, right? If you try to probe down the cycle, it's just, come on, man. There's a reason why everything works. Okay, that's the thing about systems thinking. Okay, so how can you come up with ideas and ideas for experiences in services? Now, how can you understand all of this? How can you come up with problems? Well, for inspiration, you can have experiential research, which is you went through an experience. A lot of companies, especially entrepreneurs, have gone through this process. People have experienced a trouble, a pain yourself, because you can understand the problem from every dimension, right? Because you experience it yourself, right? So you were traveling somewhere and you found out that the booking experience is just horrible. Then you'll try to refine that part of experience, and people can relate to you because you saw the problem that you yourself and so many others are facing as well. And this again, experiential should be based on your observational. Should be based on, you should mix your experiential part with observational part. You have to be observant as well. Now, when you face the problem, you also have to observe and see how many other people have the same problem. Or maybe if you are not able to figure that out, you can also do observational research or observational inspiration. So that's a way of gathering data, right? So you observe people around you and you see that there's a problem here, there's a problem there. Okay, I know the solution to this problem. Maybe I can contribute, maybe I can put my life into this. This seems to be a bigger problem than it is. So you basically observe things around you. Observe is a little more than just trying to brainstorm or just trying to see things. Observe is you see things acting out in motion. Okay, so that's like a movie. It's not a picture. And what I mean is, observing is, okay, for example, me talking here, you're basically observing me here, because what you're doing is you're not just seeing me in the way I look, but how I act, how I talk, and everything. So you build a mental model about myself in your head based on a set of observations. I move my hand too much. I look at, I don't know, everywhere here too much. Look at my surroundings. You can probably tell he lives in India. Maybe you observe things, how I act, how I take my hands up. Do I shake my head here? That's an Indian. So you have observations. You observe. Oh, maybe that's the case. Maybe that's the thing. So observations and experiential knowledge go well together. So brainstorming is mostly you just coming up with random ideas. Now, brainstorming is a kind of problem I'm trying to solve through this model here. And we should try not to be random here, because brainstorming is what leads us to, like, okay, brainstorming are really cool for, like, for example, you came up with a higher idea, like you came up with an idea, but you didn't know how to branch that out. You want to try a couple of variants, then you can try doing brainstorming and come up with a couple of different random ideas and try out a couple of things, and then you find out, okay, maybe this is a good path to go forward at, and then you pursue that, and then you can carve out a better path from there on. But brainstorming is not a long-term strategy. It's definitely not something that I would recommend as a way to come up with problems. It usually doesn't result in a sustainable product or service. The other one is empirical or theoretical inspiration. So you're basically going through research materials or literary articles, so people just get influenced by, for example, the politics that's happening, this political polarization and all that stuff, and then we see, shit, there really seems to be a problem here, we need to do something about this. Or I think there's an opportunity to make better machine learning algorithms because of this problem here. Maybe we should try to do something about that. So the way you do that, you first state the problem, and then you gather the data surrounding that problem, and then you try to analyze the data, and then you try to imply what the data means in conjunction or in the light of the literature you researched. So you try to analyze research and the data you gather and try to make sense out of it and suggest whether it can be, or you can define relations. So you can say, oh, so this problem and this problem are linked, so we need to solve these two things, so this is what it means. We have so many people suffering from this disease, and we have so many people living in this place, so therefore this is a relationship. You can also define the cause, so the reason for this is because this. Okay, so there are different kinds of researches. So you can also type in on Google, I think, if you can type in different types of research or different types of research models, I think is what you need to search for, and you'll get you'll get different methods. So correlational, causal. You can also have just plain data. So this is where I would say, when we talk about people being biased, okay, I don't believe that anybody is really 100% unbiased, because you can be, because you are influenced and you are a product of emotions, things you adopted in your life, and things that just came out of the spaces in between, which is both physical and metaphysical. Okay, I will close this video with the last thing I want to talk about is the space in between. So now when we talk about making products that last longer, we need to try to create something called a balanced loop. Okay, balanced loop in systems thinking is the idea where, for example, um, you create a product and service that tries to exploit any person. You need to create a other service to try to solve the exploitation you created. For example, no social network was created with the intention to spread fake news. But today, fake news is a very big problem in becoming an even pressing issue these days. So the question that now comes up is, with fake news being a bigger problem, and you can talk about the implications there. The consequences of fake news are from people losing their lives to people losing their livelihoods to literally anything and everything. So the question that comes is, okay, so if the intention of the social media products was not to create and spread fake news, how are you going to, if you made the decision in haste, and because as we discussed, when we all started off at the beginning, when we all had equal amounts of resources, we all had equal amount of money. Then we thought, okay, if you are going to, if you're going, because all of us humans have ambitions, and this is why people often criticize the social left. I mean the people who are into socialization. I'm talking about the opposite of capital system. If you are into the system which is anti-capitalistic, basically, you will try to say that we all have to try to achieve balance. But the counter argument given by the libertarian left is that so long as we humans have ambitions, it's really difficult to try to suppress our ambitions, because there needs to exist free market, and sort of there will always exist inequality. We're talking about outcome. We're talking about outcome here, not opportunities here. So there will always exist the inequality of outcome, and that's true because, again, when we talk about balanced loop again here, it's like when you create products and services, sometimes if you create a product or service without thinking about the consequences, you're going to create more problems, right? So those more problems will create more problems again. So for every problem you create, there's two more problems or one more problem that is being another big issue there. If you're trying to solve the problem of people socializing, the aspect of socializing is a big thing, because especially for introverts, I mean, in the Western system, especially when enforced monogamy is no longer a thing. Monogamy, I mean, forget about monogamy, but marriages are no longer a thing. But when that becomes a thing, people have to go after, getting their partners. So when they go after taking the partners, the question now that becomes is, okay, so they all have to, strive and compete to get the best partner that they want. Now, when they do that, while they do that, one of the biggest things that happen is not everybody is able to get the best partner, because the range of experiences differ. Now, not everybody are really good with socializing, but that doesn't mean that they're really bad people, or they're like, not everybody can really get the best partner. So for that reason, one of the things that's happening is people, especially introverts, now have this problem of socializing. So how can you bring an even, let's say, even system here where people of all kinds can socialize? So for that, you create a system where people can just transfer thoughts to another person's brain without having to talk. You just think, and then you transfer the thought and idea to somebody else's head. Now that creates other problems. Now, those problems may sound trivial today, but you need to think about the consequences and how you're going to cope up with them. And that's why systems thinking is a big, thing here. And that's why why I don't like materialism or consumerism, because you basically go after things that you don't really need. You want to think about, okay, if I'm going to buy this, this is going to happen. Alright, so if that's going to happen, then that's going to result in these problems. So how am I going to tackle those problems in the future? So you think about it, everything has baggages, everything brings consequences. So you want to think about those things. Now, when you talk about spaces in between here, spaces in between is a part where you extract problems out. Okay, so you need to perfect things around yourself first. Okay, so you want to start from you're making your things better, and then you can expand into other things. Now, obviously, the idea is not to create a perfect experience, perfect survival strategy, because eventually you're going to be taken down, right, by death. So the thing is, that's not the idea. The idea is not to be completely safe from death. The idea is to first try to fix things around yourself, things that actually, things that you can actually touch and things that you can actually influence, so that you feel a sense of meaning, and then you can you put yourself up there. Now, obviously, all of us think at different levels, so you want to start from yourself and finding out where you stand in this, right? So that's that from myself, and I hope that you guys figured out how we can make products and services that people actually want. With that said, if you want to watch more videos like this, subscribe to this channel and like this video, because that helps this that helps this channel. And I shall see you guys in another video very soon. Goodbye.